right, so we just introduced him. Everybody knows him from his media and marketing skills through Stafford Speedway. He puts out incredible videos. He does a lot of things for short track racing in general. Without any further ado, on the other side of the Zoom call here, we have Bonssa Tufa. What's going on, man?
Are you sure I'm known by everybody? Is that true?
Well, I mean, maybe now that you're on the show.
Oh, you know what? There you go. I like that. I'm doing good. I can't complain. Just living the dream, working at a racetrack. What more can I say?
Oh, for sure, man. So, I mean, there's a lot of different kinds of people that go to racetracks. I feel there's a pretty big diverse little world that we have, I think, sometimes. But you have a pretty interesting story. So for those that don't know, for those that might not have ever heard of you before this show, who the
Mhm.
fuck is Bonsa Tuba?
I don't even know where to start. Well, fun fact that many people don't know, I was born in England. Not many people would guess that. I don't have a British accent though, so that disappoints everybody. I'm sorry. Um, yeah, I've lived in Maryland most of my life. I've been a NASCAR fan since 2004. Actually, I became a Tony Stewart fan the week after my first NASCAR race that I watched because it was at Watkins Glen, and Stewart fell sick while running the race and leading the event. And it turned out he had some sort of stomach virus and he took a shit in his fire suit and he was all better. And he ended up winning the race. So, 8-year-old me was inspired, and that's how Tony Stewart became my favorite driver. And I kind of stuck with NASCAR since then. So I've been a NASCAR fan for 17 years or so, I guess now, almost 18 now since we're in 2022. But I've been doing broadcast and media since middle school, especially on a more common basis in high school and college. And I wanted to be in racing. It's been my number one sport ever since I first started watching it. My parents always said that when my mom was pregnant with me, they used to watch Formula One, so it was in their blood. So I don't know. I eventually got out of my undergrad at Towson near Baltimore and got my degree. And after a couple hours of not doing shit, I was like, all right, I got to do something else. And I decided to go to grad school. And I knew I wanted to try racing. So if I'm going to try racing, I'm going to have to go on the local level. I can't just start in Cup, which is, my number one goal. So I was looking up schools and I saw this school called Quinnipiac University down in Hamden, Connecticut. And there was a track nearby. And back then, Stafford was NASCAR sanctioned. So I saw on the NASCAR Roots website, it was like an hour away. An hour is not bad for me, at least then. An hour now is a pain in the ass. But I thought, okay. I hit up a guy named Jeremy who kind of supervises the interns at Stafford. And I also got in contact with Lisa Root, and I said, look, I'm moving in August. Can I come join y'all? And they said, sure. So they welcomed me in. I wish I came a week earlier than I did, because the week before I went to Stafford was the infamous night where Doug Coby had his F-bomb in his post-race interview, where he's like, I don't get heartbroken. I get fucking pissed. Said that on the live microphone, and it was glorious. But yeah, that was my first night at Stafford, and the week after. And it's so weird because living in Maryland for 20 years, I didn't know a damn soul in Connecticut, let alone at Stafford. So it was kind of weird trying to get to know people. But that night, the SK modified race, the margin of victory was 7/1000ths of a second. So I was like, okay, I guess this shit ain't bad after all. And that's my first race. I'd never been to a racetrack in my life until I came to Stafford a couple of years ago. So getting all that together, I have to wear earplugs. I'm a pansy when it comes to that. It's way too damn loud for me to handle. So I have to wear earplugs at the track all the time. I'm getting better though. I can handle the street stocks, but the SKs and open modifieds are a no-go. But I guess I've done a decent amount in a couple of years, have I?
I was gonna say, I think you've done enough to at least put your name out there, make a mark, if you will. It's an interesting story for sure. Definitely a different route than most people take, I think. So at what point were you, kind of swaying back and forth, and you're like, no, it's motorsports. This is what I want to do.
Well, before I became a media major in my undergrad, I was actually an accounting major because my parents really wanted me to get a good, high-paying job out of college. They want me to live a good life, financially stable and such. So accounting was the way to do it. And anytime I told people about being an accounting major, they're like, do you know that accountants have the highest suicide rate? I'm like, why the fuck would you tell me that? Why? I don't understand. But I was an accounting major because I actually did good in high school with accounting. And then I got to college and I ended up with a 2.7 GPA and a D plus in accounting. So I was like, yeah, this shit ain't for me. So I convinced my parents, let me switch my major because I've been doing media for a long time and I loved it and it's something I'm actually good at. So they let me do it. So I switched over, still graduated on time. I announced baseball games, softball games at my undergrad school and such. So that's how the media side got started. The racing side, once I got out of college for my undergrad and I started working part time elsewhere, I was like, if I'm going to go to grad school, racing is my number one sport. I love talking about racing. I can talk about racing forever. I love racing history. I need to be a part of racing, I feel like. So, I mean, it was pretty easy for me to just say, like, you know what? This is my dream. Ever since undergrad, I'm like, I can do it. I'm old enough. I know how to interact with people. I have an understanding of I have to start small. So just go in humble and hope for the best, I guess.
It's
So
like,
it worked out that, yeah, this is kind of weird. I've never Zoomed before, but it worked out, Bonza, that you didn't even really know. Like for me, Stafford, that's where all like the big name NASCAR, announcers, media guys, Mike
Yep.
Massaro, Mike Boy, just a couple of examples. So you kind of lucked out in that aspect that happened to be the track you landed after college wise.
Well, they have the internship on the website. So I looked up the media internship and I saw the names. I'm like, okay, Mike Joy, absolute legend. Mike Massaro, who's been in the NASCAR business forever. Kyle Rickey, who I listen to on the radio to this day. Like seeing all these names, I'm like, okay. And Jack Arute Jr., obviously, Jackie. So
Yeah, I
like,
didn't even think of
okay,
that.
this is some serious shit. Like this is legit. So what better place to start? I didn't realize how big Stafford is in the short track world. I didn't realize that Stafford is considered by many to be one of the best short tracks in the country. I didn't realize it had some of the best infrastructure among short tracks on the local level. So I was like, wow, like I really hit the jackpot with this.
yeah, especially not having to bounce around from track to track, because I know that a lot of people have to do that and take that route. And one thing that I've noticed about Stafford was that I first went to Stafford for the first time ever 2 years ago, and it was just one trip to the fall final. And then last year I went the same amount of times I went to Beach Ridge, which is my home track right down the road. Spent 9 or 10 days at both of those establishments last year. But the community at Stafford is it's one that's really easy to get along with, at least from my vantage point. Like I didn't really know anyone that first time that I went. Now I feel like it's the community's kind of embraced the fact that we travel down and spend so much time at the racetrack. Have you noticed some of that?
Oh my gosh. When I first walked into the pits the first day, I mean, there's 5 divisions. Each division has at least a dozen cars. Most of them have almost 20, 25. So you have 100 cars in the pits. And I'm like amazed at seeing all these cars. And I think, oh shit, I had to know all these people. How the hell am I going to do that? Well, I guess it kind of worked out now that I look back on it. But I guess I DM'd Alan Bestwick one day. Alan Bestwick, who a lot of NASCAR fans for a long time love, one of the best broadcasters in the past couple of decades, in my opinion. I actually DM'd him because he has a bit of a Stafford connection. I asked him for advice on how to approach all of it. And he actually got back to me. He's one of the coolest people. I don't know if you guys got to meet him at SRX. One of the nicest people. And he was like, you just gotta take it slow and learn one at a time. And I think what helped me was my first job, really my only job in my first year, was I recorded Nicole LaRosa's post-race interviews in the pits. So everyone kind of knew me as you're the guy that records Nicole's interviews and such. So people started learning about me through that. And then just slowly building off of it, I started building more friendships. The first people that approached me were Lisa Root and Tom Fox, which said a lot to me already, is that they came to me and introduced themselves to me just to make me feel at home. So even something as little as that goes a long way. So like even now when we get new interns at Stafford, I try to make them feel at home and bust their tail a bit, just to be like, dude, don't feel tensed up. Like, we're glad you're here. Just do what you gotta do, show that you care, and the respect comes with it. So it took a bit, but you said it. I mean, I've been treated extremely well pretty much from day one. And as time goes on, it seems like that good treatment, that respect has just exponentially gone up because I've kind of, I guess, earned my stripes, you can say.
I think that's that's pretty cool that you're able to kind of almost fall into a place that has such talent from its past already, and a lot of names that we're already all so familiar with. So, have you been able to take any of what you've learned from Stafford and go to different places and kind of experience the, what we're trying to do here, and meld the whole short track community together? Have you been able to travel at all?
I have not. The furthest I've traveled is Thompson and Waterford. I want to go. I've been trying to go to Seekonk since I first came here, but for one reason or another, I haven't been able to go. I want to go to Seekonk. I want to go to Monadnock. I want to go to Loudon for the tour race. I want to go to, well, I wish I went to Beach Ridge after I saw the tour race there. That was my first Beach Ridge race I seen in the live stream. The racing was fantastic. So, Star, all these tracks I eventually want to go to. I have a lease on my car that has limited mileage, so I can't really do too much traveling in that regard, or else I'll spend half my savings on it. But I mean, the end goal, yeah, is to travel more places just to see different tracks. That's one thing I love about all these short tracks here in New England, is that each one is different. You got Stafford, the half-mile track, 9 degrees one side, 7 degrees on the other. Thompson, a half-mile, tight turns, high banked. Waterford, a third of a mile, 2 grooves. I think Waterford puts on the best show in Connecticut. As much as I love Stafford, I think Waterford is up there, if not exceeds, in terms of being able to put on a good show across all divisions. Monadnock is a tiny little bull ring, but one turn I feel like is steeper than Talladega. It's amazing how high banked Monadnock is. Star, it's its own, like they're all different. So yeah, I want to travel around and check places out. Thunder Road, I want to go to a tri-track race at Thunder Road. That's going to be fun to watch. So I haven't done as much traveling as I want to, but hopefully if I stick around a little bit more, I can do that.
Of all the things that you've been fortunate enough to do already in such a short amount of time, you've obviously learned a lot of things. You've gained a lot of knowledge. Is there anything in particular or specific that you'd like to know more about or investigate or have the knowledge of?
The business, which I work with their roots, so I can talk to them about different stuff. But the short track business is so interesting, especially because I've been watching mainstream NASCAR for so long, that how the big tracks in NASCAR operate compared to how the local short tracks operate is completely different. And you see it in the pandemic, where in NASCAR at Darlington, you can have empty stadium races because a lot of their TV money gives them the funds that they need to keep going. At Stafford or any other track, we don't have TV money, so we rely on pay-per-view or the live streams, or especially the ticket sales at the gate. So it's interesting learning the business side. I've learned a lot on the video side, and that's something I still want to learn, is the live streaming side of things, because the production, it's fast paced. We only have 4 cameras in our production, but it all happens so fast that you really have to almost anticipate. You have to be proactive rather than reactive. So, but directing the races, directing the broadcast, because if people don't know, I direct the flow broadcast for Stafford. I'm the one that switches the cameras and everything. It's hectic sometimes, but it's so much fun. I think that's some of the most fun I've had, because it helps that I know the sport so damn well, and like I can have a great idea of what's going to happen next. So the production side is definitely something I need to learn more about, but the business side I think is so interesting.
Well, that's good. It slides into what my next question was going to be for you. Take us through, what is your Friday at Stafford like, from when you get there to when you leave? What do you do over the course of a race meet? I haven't been to Stafford in like 11 years, which is a flaw of mine.
What the hell are you doing? Get your ass over here.
Fuck, man, I work late on Fridays, and we got the go-kart gig on Fridays, so it's tough, but I do want to get back there. I really want to race there. It's the only track in Connecticut I've never raced at, but I'm a big fan of the Flow Racing broadcast. Stafford's Flow Racing, my personal opinion, kicks the shit out of anyone else's production, and it sounds like you're the reason why it's so good. So take us through a typical Friday night for you at Stafford.
Well, it's not just me. I got an awesome team. My team is bad freaking ass, and from the producer to the people who help out behind the scenes. Nice cat, by the way.
Yeah.
For those who don't listen, or not watching, I'm looking at freaking Timmons' cat on the webcam. So let's see. A normal Friday night, I get to the track probably around, let's say 10 or 11. I get there decently early. Usually I go there, I talk to the routes. I usually talk to Paul. Paul is the one I communicate with the most. He's the one that does a lot of the social media, multimedia stuff. So I usually go there around 10, 11. We talk, we have ideas of like who to interview, who do we do for our pit preview where we whip around and talk to 4 drivers for a short amount of time, put that all into one video. So that's basically what it is. Otherwise, I'm going out and setting up cameras or setting up our power equipment, what we use to power up the cameras and connect the cameras to the production trailer behind turn 4. So that's normally what I do for the first couple hours, just put everything together, make sure everything is working. I want to know in advance if there's any issues. I'd rather know beforehand by a couple hours than find out at the green flag. So that's what I basically do from like 10, 11 o'clock to probably 2, 3 o'clock. And then after that, we get ready for our interviews in the pits pre-race. We might do a couple drivers, individual interviews, and then we do a video with 4 interviews put together. It depends on what race. If it's the 5K, the SK 5K, we'll interview 4 SK drivers. If it's a normal day, maybe 1 limited driver, an SK driver, a late model driver, and a street stock driver, or something like that. Try to keep it diverse because we want to try and give each division as much exposure as they can. SK Modifieds are obviously the headline division, but we want to give all the divisions love. So that's what we do from about 2 o'clock or so, because practice starts at around 4 o'clock. So we try to get that done beforehand. And then once practice hits, sometimes I'll go out different parts of the track, get some B-roll, get some extra video footage of people, in the pits working on their cars or practicing on the track. You can never have too much. You may never know when you need it. And then once practice is over, get to the production trailer behind turn 4, get ready for the heat races, and then just direct from there.
Seems like you're pretty busy. Do you have any issue trying to mix work with pleasure? Like, I know you're a race fan. Do you have any Friday night where you don't get to just sit back and watch the race? You have to be directing the whole entire time.
That's what Thompson and Waterford are for. Those are the races I can go to where I don't have to worry about working. I can't complain. As much as I might like to watch the spectator, I'm still watching it, and so and I'm making a difference, I feel like, with the experience. So I really don't feel that way. I'm grateful for being able to do what I do. Sometimes I forget that the track is next to me. Sometimes when you're in that trailer, you just feel like you're in your own little spot. And I look out the window, I'm like, oh shit, the racetrack is right there. Like, I can see the racing out there on my window, but you're so locked in on the big TV with all these different screens and all these different cameras that you kind of forget that the racing right next to you. But no, I'm not upset about that. That's why I enjoy going to Thompson and Waterford, because I get to go there and relax and have fun.
Bob?
I was just gonna follow up. I didn't know that there was a production trailer there. I guess I should have known that, but I'm virtually clueless when it comes to TV things. So that's pretty badass for sure.
Yeah, there's one. So in turn 4, you had the 2 suites, and the trailer is right behind that. So it's kind of covered by the support railing for the 2 suites.
Makes sense. Seems like you probably should have one of those if you're going to do TV racing.
It's a little bit important, yes.
What was it like going to the SRX deal and being able to, at least see Tony Stewart? I assume you interviewed Tony Stewart up close. You're the reason why you got into NASCAR. You're a big fan of his, obviously. And then Alan Bestwick, being able to talk to him in person, I'm sure. How was the SRX deal for you? Because I know for me, it was something that I never ever anticipated being able to do. That was funny. I posted the 10-year challenge deal on Facebook, and it was a picture of fat me with Kyle Busch as just a fan. And I almost used the picture of me interviewing Tony Stewart as, the follow-up picture, because 10 years ago, I was just that fat kid, with greasy hair trying to get Kyle Busch's autograph. And now this year I had a microphone in Tony Stewart's face. But talk about the SRX deal. Did you get to interview a lot of those guys?
Actually, no. We didn't get a chance to, because of either I had to prepare the broadcast or because of conflict with timing and scheduling, which sucked. But oh my gosh, I'd never met a top level racer in my life. So to be there and see my favorite NASCAR driver in Tony Stewart, one of my favorite IndyCar drivers in Tony Kanaan and Elio Castroneves, who just a month before won the freaking Indy 500, which is surreal. And it's the easiest marketing you'll ever have as a racetrack, to say that the most recent Indy 500 winner is coming to your track to race. But, Willie T. Ribbs, his story is unreal. The crazy thing is seeing Brad Doherty that dude is tall as shit. Oh my gosh. It's ridiculous how much he just stands over everybody. It's the atmosphere. You want to talk about a big event atmosphere. That was it. That was unlike anything I had ever seen. And I mean, the place was packed, dude. The place was absolutely packed to its core. I don't know if you could fit any more people there, but to see all the big names out there, just right in Danica Patrick, some of these people were shorter than I thought. I guess TV makes people look taller and bigger than they are because some people are short. But talking to Alan Beswick was really cool. Got to chat with him for like 5 or 10 minutes. He's one of those guys where if you just ask him, his DMs are open. You ask him for advice. He's so humble and willing to help you out, which just, it means a lot, especially when he's one of your favorite broadcasters that you look up to. But SRX was incredible. I mean, heck, the SK All-Star Showdown was incredible that day. The pit party we had, the autographs, it was just nuts. I mean, we talk about the pandemic that's been going on for 2 years. That really just felt like nothing else mattered except that race and that event, which was something I just hadn't felt in over 2 years. So it was just so surreal. I don't know if there'll ever be an atmosphere match. I mean, Tri-Track last year at Stafford or in 2020, that had a big event atmosphere, but SRX was just on a whole nother level. The star power in that track and knowing that we were the first SRX race, which in of itself was huge. You know you're going to have at least 1 million people watching you on TV. That is your track in the spotlight. It was almost overwhelming in a way, but it was just so damn cool. And actually, I remember seeing you guys interviewing some of the drivers. I'm like, damn, I should have just took their approach because they didn't give a shit. They just went up there and interviewed people. So I'm sure you guys had a lot of fun as much as we did.
That was like what was weird though is it was almost like you said overwhelming in the sense that so we showed up there at like 10. The microphone equipment that we were using didn't show up until closer to noon. So then we were all kind of just standing around, but there was just so much going on, and it being the first event that I didn't really know how it was going to play out. And so they started doing like their practice laps or whatever, and we're on the infield for it. And then you can see like the fans filling up, and the race doesn't even start for 4 or 5 hours. It was the closest thing to when I watch old NASCAR races and the stands are completely packed, like you can't fit any other human into the racetrack. It was the closest thing that I think that I'll ever see to that, especially on that magnitude, I guess. Now they're taking out grandstands and NASCAR tracks trying to make it look like that, but no, that whole event was wild, and I guess I don't know that I still have realized it yet that I was able to stand next to Elio Castroneves interviewing him a month after he won the Indy 500 again. But it was just that was something that, and a lot of the guys that I wanted to interview, like Bill Elliott was one of my favorites as a kid. I like Mike Waltrip, so it was hard to try to get my hands on like each and every single one of them. I wanted to interview every driver that was there, but I kind of just took, the ones that were the easiest to access. And luckily Elio and Tony are two pretty good names to be able to talk to. But I hope that event comes back to Stafford. That was something that I will never forget. That was probably it was easily the coolest thing that's ever happened to me in my life, was going to that SRX deal at Stafford. So
I think one of my favorite moments though was the night before. Michael Waltrip, who's clearly not sober, is walking down the open modified grid, just shooting video and such. And one of the officials came up like, okay, look, you're having fun, but you can't be doing this. Like, you got to move. And they eventually had him do the command. I was like, are you kidding me? I was so jealous though, because that night, one of our interns, he was kind of free to roam around during one of our features, and he was chilling on the scaffolding in turn 3. And if you remember, SRX was parked in the backstretch. This dude had Tony Stewart, Ken Schrader, and a few other stars go up the scaffolding. He got to have a conversation with all of them throughout the night. I was so freaking jealous of Ryan, that's his name, Ryan, that he got the chance to talk to those guys who clearly had some beers in their intake. Like, it was, we saw it on camera, like we didn't put it live, but we saw him on camera just all shooting the shit. I'm like, you are one lucky son of a gun. I was so jealous of it. But what a storybook way to end it with Doug Coby winning. I mean, seeing the fans go nuts when Coby won, and then he slipped and fell, but that's a different ordeal. But if anyone can laugh at themselves falling down, it's Doug Coby. I mean, he handled that well. But seeing Coby win that race, first race, the local star, the Coby chants, I mean, it was almost like a perfect day, to be honest. Like, you couldn't have asked for a more successful first race, which is the first race. Not everything's going to be perfect, but it just damn near was perfect. And it just made that whole entire day memorable for me.
I know that we got some Patreon questions here. I'll go all the way back to last week. Yeah, there's some that we either won't mention or we'll just bleep out the whole entire question. Jonathan Williams.
Tom Fowler didn't get in on this again.
Yeah, there was a couple ridiculous ones. There's definitely some this week too. Jonathan Williams asked if you could watch any driver race a race, who and at what track. So I guess for you, that and anywhere other than Thompson, Waterford, or you could even go NASCAR or IndyCar or whatever. But any driver at any track. This is a last week question as well, but it was just Bobby and Charlie last week. So.
Any driver, any track aside from Connecticut and any Connecticut connection.
Well, I just don't want to get you in trouble. So I know that you I don't know if you can play favorites.
I will never play favorites. Or at least I won't show it. Dude, Kyle Larson on any dirt track. It's so fun to watch him just sling it and find a way to get through the field and win. I mean, he's one of the best racers that we have today across any division or any type of car, dirt, asphalt. Hell, he could probably race on water and do well. So Larson, any dirt track, to be honest. I mean, hell, watching him and Christopher Bell at the Chili Bowl last year, I mean, that was so fun to watch. So I'd probably say Larson at a dirt track.
Yeah, the fact that he even jumped in a late model, he was the best, best in the field, that says something. Mm-hmm. David of Zurich, I hope that's how you say it. What's the transition been like for Stafford since stepping away from being NASCAR Sanction? Any pros and cons, and who are your top 3 SK modified guys you've seen at Stafford? So
I really haven't noticed any cons. Like, honestly, Stafford got to the point where, I mean, the NASCAR Sanction maybe wasn't necessary anymore. And, there's a whole streaming rights deal. But I think Stafford got a positive out of it. I mean, Flow Racing was a huge hit this past year. It hasn't affected our car counts in any ways. I mean, we still have great field sizes. We have great competition. Stafford has their own point fund now, and their point fund, I think, is bigger than the one that was there before the sanction was repealed. So I really don't see any cons as of now. I think Stafford has done a great job, objectively speaking, of moving on from NASCAR and making a name for themselves. As far as the top 3 SK drivers, Keith Rocco, number 1. No doubt about it. Seeing him, even in my 2 years, seeing him at Stafford, Thompson, Waterford, the moves he make on the track, everyone else either would not make those moves or could try those moves and wreck their asses. Keith Rocco, he pulls off moves that I can't believe work. So he's obviously number 1. Second and third is tough. Oh boy. I don't know. I think this is gonna be hard because I mean there's so many good ones. That's the thing that makes it tough, is that there's so many damn good SK drivers. I mean, you obviously have Ronnie Williams. I mean, Ronnie, he's a smart racer. Doesn't usually. When I first came to Stafford in 2019, it seemed like a lot of people were booing him because he had bumped a couple people out of the way on the last lap in a couple races. But I'd say it's so hard. It's between probably Kopchik, Owen, and Williams for those last 2 spots. Christopher is up there too. I'd probably have to say Todd second, just because I think he's really smooth. And I think I'd put Kopchik third because I think he's on the rise up. Yeah, he had his DQ at the end of last year, which sucked. But I thought he was due for a breakout year. I mean, in 2020, he only had 1 win, but he had so many good runs and so many fast cars, only to end up getting wrecked some way, somehow. So I think I'd probably go with Rocco, Owen, Kopchik. But I mean, Ronnie and Mike Christopher are right there too. So I mean, it's not like they're in a whole nother division. I mean, that group of 5, I think, is the core of the SKs at Stafford.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. And I don't let facts get in the way of a good story of that Kopchik win that got taken away from him, because that was probably the loudest I've seen a short track for just not SRX is its own deal, but that was probably the loudest I've seen a short track in at least a decade. So
I was bummed first for Kopchik because I hate to see anything bad happen to anybody. But that SK championship battle was going to be tied going into the season finale. That would have been nuts. Now, in hindsight, Kopchik and Owen wrecked on lap 3 of the finale, but like that would have been huge to have the top two in the SK points tied going into. I'd rather have them tied going in than tied at the end of the season. And so that would have been incredible. Those two were fantastic all year long. They had put good shows against each other. So it is what it is. But yeah, the Kotrick deal was unfortunate, but that's racing.
I was planning on coming back that next week for that finale, but then he got DQ'd and it wasn't going to be tied going into the final week. So I didn't end up making the 3-hour journey. But Sean Miner asked, if you took 2 lasagnas and stacked them on top of each other, would you have 1 lasagna or 2 lasagnas?
It's the stupidest question I've ever heard in my life.
Welcome to
I don't understand why I'm hearing this question so much. It's 1 lasagna. If you think otherwise, you're wrong. Just like pineapple doesn't belong on pizza, doesn't make 2 lasagnas. It's 1 lasagna.
Oh, all right. No, that's just not true.
That's correct.
A Hawaiian pizza is pretty fucking good.
I disagree.
Well, it's all right.
No fruits or vegetables belong on pizza.
Exactly. Especially a warm, moist fruit.
Do you not?
Damn right.
Do you not put red sauce on your pizza?
That's a
Red
different.
sauce?
Yeah. Does it not have sauce on it?
It's a different thing.
That's different, dude.
Is
That's
it made
different.
out of tomatoes? That's a fruit.
That's different. No, tomatoes different.
You just said you can't have any fruit on it. That's a fruit.
Nah, tomatoes different. I'm talking like apples, bananas, and all that shit, not tomatoes.
There's a dumber question, I promise.
Oh boy.
Scott Fowler asked, if you were in a room, if you're in a room with 100 dicks, how many are you choking on? You don't need to answer that.
Wait, what was the question?
If you were in a room with 100 dicks, how many are you choking on? And then his follow-up question was, if you had the chance to race any car at any racetrack in New England, what car are you racing and where?
Do I wreck the shit out of it?
Yeah. Thompson?
Yeah, no, I would never drive Thompson that track. Ooh. There's not a soft hit at Thompson, dude. You probably remember the pass wreck that happened there at the season finale in turn 2.
Oh yeah.
I would probably go with, it's 2 things, either an SK at Stafford or tour type at New Hampshire. One of those 2. I'd probably lean towards SK at Stafford because I don't know if my body can handle the speed of New Hampshire going 115 to turn 1. So I think an SK at Stafford is where I'll stay for now. I wouldn't recommend anyone giving me a car to drive though.
Yeah. Fair enough. So looking ahead, looking into the future a little bit, I mean, you've created this little ball of work at Stafford. You've made a name for yourself in the marketing and media department there and things like that. But moving forward, is that something that you want to grow, or do you want to kind of branch out? Do you want to go different places? What's the end goal?
You see, I learned during the summer, if I try to plan too far ahead, it's going to come back to bite my ass, because the last time I did that, my apartment had a fire and I was homeless for 6 weeks. So did you guys not know about that?
And I saw it on the Facebook year-end wrap-up deal you posted. But
yeah. So I was homeless for 6 weeks in a hotel because of that. So it's like, I don't want to look too far ahead into the future. I'm just focusing on getting through 2022. I mean, Stafford's got big things planned for 22. Don't even ask me what those are, because I ain't saying shit. But I'm excited for 22. I'm just focused on getting through 2022 and making the most of what we have and making sure we build off of what we pulled off in 21, because I thought 2021 we did a really damn good job. So try to be the best production team we can be in 22, and then what happens after that, I don't know. It's just, we gotta wait and see. I not planning further ahead than a year these days, because anything can happen. I'm not dealing with another shit like an apartment fire ruining all my plans.
So
do you have any aspirations of moving on to higher levels of motorsports and media and all that? Or I know you're not planning ahead, but what is like
my number one goal is to make it to Cup. Although it's just like, one thing about short track racing is that it opened my eyes to how much Cup seems to be lacking compared to the local atmosphere, because when you watch Cup racing for 15 years, that's all you watch. You're like, oh, the racing's fine. And you look at the short tracks and you're like, man, that is so much better. And I'm not trying to knock on NASCAR, and I hope their new car that they're having this year does well. It's just, when you see the racing at Stafford, Thompson, New Hampshire, Waterford, and then you see the racing in Cup, a 500-mile race at Atlanta or something, it's like, it's not the same. It's not as good. And then a lot of decisions that NASCAR make, you wonder why or if they're good decisions and such. But I'd still say the end goal is to make it to the top level, just to be able to say that I made it to the top. But, that might change depending on NASCAR's trajectory. I don't know, but short track racing is where my heart is right now.
So I think one last question that we have here. We're at 3 minutes left of our incredible Zoom account.
Yeah, I see that.
So one last question I like to end pretty much anything on. I think this has been really good. I think it's been super insightful. Your experiences and what you want to do and your motivations to motorsports. But the one question I like to ask every single person that comes on this, when it all comes down to it, and it's all boils down to it, what is it that brings Bonssa Tufa to the racetrack? Why do you have to be there every week?
It's my job. I work full time at Stafford, but no, aside from that, the people. Don't get me wrong, the racing is great and I love it, but the people make it. For example, the apartment fire, somebody from the Wild Thing Cars, which I do on Monday nights at Stafford, where kids get to start their racing career at a good budget. A mother from the Wild Thing Cars opened a GoFundMe for me when I had my apartment fire to help, deal with whatever expenses I might have to deal with afterwards. And I think the goal was like 2,000. I think it went up to 2,500 at the end, which just blew my mind. So, and then Stafford Speedway, another kart track, they had a race sponsored in my name. They gave me money as well, separate from the GoFundMe. So just seeing all the support that people have given me, people messaging me like, keep up the good work. You're doing great. I love your content and such. All that goes a long way. That's what makes me keep going, seeing people encouraging me to do what I do and that what I do is big. So I'd say the people make a difference anywhere you go. If it's a toxic environment, it's not worth it. And, racing has its drama, obviously, but honestly, the people and the big picture of things, it's a family. It's a dysfunctional family at times, but it's a family. And that's what I love the most.
I like that answer.
I'm pissed that we only have a minute left because I still had a couple more questions I wanted to bring up.
Oh yeah, there's a lot more I could talk about.
No, we might have to call you back. I was trying to upgrade in the middle of this, but it brought me to having to create an account and date of birth and a bunch of other shit.
You don't have an account?
No,
bro, y'all some cheap asses. What the hell?
I have an account. It's just that it's not currently logged in, so I'm a little fucked. I don't want to be sitting here typing while Charlie's trying to ask questions and shit. But maybe you give us a second. We'll call you right back. So I'm gonna have to call Bob anyways for a separate recording. So
that's fine. Do what you gotta do.
All right. Well, I gotta end this one, so I'll send you a link in 5 minutes.
So one of the things, Bonssa, you said you got started at Stafford in 2019. So that was after we lost Ted Christopher. Ted was a teammate of mine and a hell of a race car driver. You either loved him or you hated him from a fan's aspect. But talk about your involvement with the documentary that was made after TC passed away, and a documentary that for sure made me cry on my way to the races one day.
Sorry. Well, before I came to Stafford, I had exposure to modifieds on TV because Speed Channel versus eventually NBC would broadcast some of the modified tour races. I used to watch when they raced at Loudon, which I thought was one of the best races on asphalt. When they raced at Bristol, when they had those races, and they had that one year they raced in the backstretch at Daytona. The Battle of the Beach was an absolute cluster disaster shitstorm. But so I heard the name Ted Christopher because when I started watching modifieds, it was just after he had won the tour title in 2008, driving the red 36 car. And I had heard about him driving the Mystique car, the 13. I heard about his driving style. So I knew a little bit about him just from watching the older races on TV when I was younger. And actually, when I was about to graduate from my master's degree, I had to do a capstone project. For those who don't know, capstone is basically like your graduation project. That's your final project before you graduate with your degree. And for my major, sports journalism, basically you're taking everything you learn and putting it into one big project. It could be a long form article, it could be a long video, a documentary, anything multimedia. So when I went to Stafford, I knew how good Ted was, but I didn't know how legendary he was until I went to Stafford. And I noticed 13 flags. And I remember I asked somebody, what's the 13? They're like, have you heard of Ted Christopher? I was like, yeah. And then they told me about the accolades he has and the fact that they retired his number. I remember the night he died. I remember seeing the news showing how big of a deal Ted Christopher, even though he mainly raced the local level, how big of a deal he is, where even I, a guy who focused on the top 3 national series, was able to hear about this news and have a reaction like, oh my gosh, like that's a big deal losing him. So I thought about, I'm like, Ted Christopher and Dale Earnhardt, who people call one of the best NASCAR drivers, if not the best ever, they have oddly parallel careers in that they both have similar driving styles. The Intimidator, you got this guy, the Tornado, because he was a tornado on the track at times, or a lot of times. They were drivers who had a ton of championships, a ton of wins, both infamous driving black cars. They both had slumps late in their career, and they both had career resurgences that we never got to see live to the full potential because they both died basically unexpectedly. So like their careers were so oddly parallel, and Dale Earnhardt is a driver that anyone can and should document. I mean, he's a very documentary worthy driver. So I'm like, how about Ted? Ted is deserving of a documentary. He is quite the personality on the track, but he's different off the track, just like Dale Earnhardt. You know, he might seem like an asshole on the track, but a lot of people say he's also one of the nicest people you meet off the track. Same with Ted Christopher. So I thought to myself, okay, let me kill 2 birds with 1 stone. My graduation project is going to be the Ted Christopher doc, and I'm going to post on Stafford's YouTube. So I hit it up with Paula Root. I talked to my advisor at school. They were both okay with it. The plan was for a 30-minute to 45-minute documentary. That didn't happen, as you can tell. So I knew the first people I had to contact were the Christopher family. And at that time, I knew Mike Christopher Jr., Mike Christopher Sr., because I had interviewed Mike Jr. beforehand about his first SK win. And I also knew Jen Christopher because she was actually the first Christopher I met when I went to M&T the first time, their business. So I contacted them. Actually, no, the first person I contacted was Quinn, Ted's widow, because Quinn had her Drive for Safety awareness giving away those fireproof undershirts in 2020. So I thought, okay, I'm going to meet her at the track at the Christopher pits. So I asked her. She said she's cool with it. She would be down for an interview. So we exchanged contacts. And she was my first interview. Ended up doing 2 interviews with her. And from there on, you know, I talked to Quinn. I talked to Mike Christopher Jr., Sr., and Jen. And I asked him, you know, who else should I interview? Because I want to get the perspective of as many people as possible: family, drivers, pit crew members, owners, media people, anybody, young, old, in the middle, 80s, 90s, 2000s. So, you know, when it comes to crews, Michael O'Sullivan came up, been crew chief for Ted forever, for a long time, with so much success. You know, getting Dan Avery, who competed with Ted in the 80s and 90s and eventually 2000s. Woody Pitcat, Doug Kobe, 2 guys who've had history with Ted in one way or another. But also getting the personal side, you know, getting the people who are close to Ted off the track. You know, Tommy Heslin, Snake, you know, he was in racing, but he and Ted became close off the track as well. You know, that group of 5, the Plainville gang, as I call them in the doc, you know, they've been best friends with each other going back to kindergarten, which I thought was one of the biggest things to get, because I wanted to get Ted's life from beginning to end. And the fact that I was able to get those guys to talk about Ted's childhood, I thought was huge, because that was like the one part that was missing in this whole story, was getting the childhood of Ted Christopher. And then I got Ted's mom, Lucy, which I didn't think I would do. I didn't think I could do that. I wasn't sure if she'd be able to do it. I knew she was around, but thankfully Jen Christopher was able to convince her and Judy, who's Ted's sister, to do the interview together at the Mike Christopher's house. And then getting Nikki Christopher, Mike Christopher Jr.'s sister, getting that younger niece perspective, getting Jim Galante, which I thought was awesome. Oh my gosh. Paul Root told me to get Jim. I thought there's no way in hell I'm getting Jim. Ever since his arrest, he's lied low. I mean, until the Danbury documentary came out, which is a badass doc. But I said, all right, I'm going to call his business, his propane business. I hit him up. A lady picked up. I asked to let Jim know that I want to do a documentary on Ted Christopher. He's like, Ted Christopher? I was like, don't worry. He'll know who I'm talking about. So I didn't expect a phone call back for a while, if at all. 10 minutes later, I get a phone call. This is Jim Galante. I was like, oh shit. Like my heart stopped. I'm like, oh, damn, I just got the man. And he said he'd love to do it. He was really nice to me. I mean, he has his history, but he was good to me, and he's been good to a lot of people. I know that. So to get him and to get his perspective as an owner, oh, I mean, I did what, 30 interviews, I think? I lost count. It was like 30 interviews with like 25, 27 people, you know? And I was able to get everything I think that I could. And the more I worked on, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not going to be 30 minutes. This will be an hour. No, it's going to be an hour and a half. Okay, this is going to, holy shit, this is 2 hours and 21 minutes. I never expected it to be like that. And what made it even more stressful, because it was stressful, but the reason it was stressful is because I didn't want to get it wrong. You know, this is Ted frickin' Christopher. This ain't no normal person. This is the man. This is the king. I didn't want to mess it up. So I was very meticulous, but also I missed 5 days of editing because I had a close contact to somebody with COVID. So I missed 5 days of editing, and this project was due in 2 weeks. So I had to edit because I edited at the track, not at home. My computer can't handle all this shit. So I was editing at the track, and I was there for 2 straight weeks, 10 hours per day for the next 2 weeks editing that documentary before I finally finished it. And just looking back, I was like, man, I got some damn good people. Keith Rocco, Ben Dodge, Matt Buckler. I could have made a 7-hour documentary out of all that I was told in those interviews, because each interview averaged about 45 minutes to an hour. Some went to 2. When you have Sean Waddell, he will talk as long as he pleases. So, but it's all good stuff. It's not wasted fluff. Like, it's all damn good stuff. But I can't put everything because there's got to be a bit of a limit to how much time this doc is. But when I finished it, we decided, all right, when are we going to publish it? And one of the guys from the Plainville gang, Dave Martino, I gave him credit. He said, do it on June 5th. I asked why. He said, what's on June 5th? And it hit me. That's Ted and Mike Christopher's birthday. So I was like, okay, that makes sense. It's on a Saturday. So we did that. We did a couple of teasers. He helped me kind of find a good way to promote the documentary without releasing too much, but showing too little. And as the day got closer, man, I got a little more anxious and a little more anxious. And I went to a wedding that day. It was released. A couple of our camera people had a wedding at Stafford on that day. So while I'm dealing with the wedding, my phone is blowing up. Like, I'm getting texts and notifications left and right, which was nuts, including a message from Quinn's mother, Ted's mother-in-law, which I never expected. It was just like, it was hard enough trying to keep your composure during the wedding because you're so emotional. And I'm also getting emotional seeing some of these messages people are sending me as well about the doc. It was so overwhelming, but it was so damn cool at the end. I mean, it was kind of like, wow, I just did that. I just pulled that off. I don't know how in the hell I pulled that off, but, like, you know, because I kind of did it all by myself in terms of interviewing, putting the videos together and such. It was all me. I had the help of Stafford giving me the equipment. The people who I interviewed gave me photos, gave me a whole lot of stuff. Ken Meisenhelder from KGM gave me all the videos from the 80s, the 90s. I can't tell you how many hours it took to make that. Hundreds of hours. That's a documentary that takes about a year or 2 to produce. I did it in 4 months, and I'll never, ever recommend that to anybody because it'll drive you freaking insane sometimes. But it's easily my proudest work. And to be honest, I don't know if I can ever beat that. I mean, not many people can say they did a 2.5-hour documentary on arguably the best modified driver in the last 3 decades in Connecticut. So to be able to have that, no matter where life takes me, there's 2 things I'll always be forever grateful for. Being able to work with my mom, who's a journalist, international journalist, being able to work with her as a producer and bossing her around, and then doing this documentary. And I mean, the Christopher family, I owe a whole lot to, because when I started this doc, I was barely around for a year. I wasn't really that known. I started getting my footsteps going, but they trusted me with this, and it went a long way. And I'm so grateful that they trusted me. And I'm so happy that so many people had so many nice things to say about it.
So I think it's safe to say I give you an A plus. I'm sure many other people will give you an A plus. What did you get for a grade on it? Or was it graded?
It was pass fail, and I passed. There was no letter grade to it.
It's an A to me.
If it was a bad documentary with all the amount of work I did, I think they still make me pass because they would feel bad for me.
Well, it certainly wasn't a bad one, that's for sure.
When it's pass fail, they all look A plus on the score sheet. So
Yup, that's what matters.
good, you know. But no, that was one thing that I didn't really know Ted Christopher, but I remember where I was the minute I found out that he'd passed away. I was standing right next to Bobby in the Turn 5 Tavern at Beach Ridge.
That was not fun.
No, it's weird though, because there's not many instances where I remember where I was when someone passed away, but that was just so shocking to read or hear about. I think Bobby's the one that actually told me about it. But watching that documentary, whether I knew him or not, I still shed some tears, and never once did I think that it was too long of a documentary. I think that you did it. It was terrific. It was really good, and everyone I think that I've ever heard talk about it has said the exact same. So
I think that also when it came to the respect, I think that helped things out a lot because people I think saw like, oh, this guy's the real deal. I think one of the coolest things was a couple. Well, Jen Christopher said, it's like I know Teddy now because I kind of do because I've heard so many stories as a result of this documentary. You know, Jim Galante texted me. He's like, hey, now you're part of the Mystique team. Thank you. I was like, wow. And then Michael O'Sullivan, who's the biggest ball buster you'll meet. He doesn't post much on Facebook, but he posted this whole paragraph talking about how he was happy that I was part of the track. He was saying that when I first came, he's like, oh, another blowhard intern trying to get his hours. And then he saw the work I did, and he's like, you know, he was like, we're happy to have you here. Stuff like that. That's what makes it all worth it. It's just being able to serve the community to your best ability and people showing their appreciation for it. And I think that was just that was so cool. It was really cool.
Well, I was glad that you're able to talk on it. I'm glad that we extended this a little bit longer. And in my opinion, the Stafford media team is second to none in the region. So not only is it some of the best racing that you'll see across the whole country, but the media aspect is definitely top notch, at least up here. So
well, I got to emphasize this. You know, I kind of feel bad that I feel like I'm mainly getting the spotlight because I shouldn't. You know, it's a team effort, and we have an amazing team. Paul LaRoute is so open to different ideas, and he's a creative mind himself that he likes to try things. He's not afraid to try things. And, you know, the guy who supervised the interns, Jeremy Wise, I mean, he helps lead this broadcast too. James Cloder, who's like the techiest person of the group, who knows so much about all the different types of technological items we have. His knowledge is incredible, and we wouldn't be able to do it without James, because if there's anyone that can troubleshoot anything, him and Jeremy can do it. You know, there's me directing. I got an awesome camera crew. You know, some of those guys have been around for a while. You know, Heather and Jason, who were married last year, they've been camera people at Stafford for several years. Heather was a camera person at Stafford back in the early 2000s. So they're incredible camera people. Ian's been around for a long time. He works the infield backstretch camera. Sean, you know, we have help from Ryan, who helped out a lot the last couple seasons. I mean, these guys, Nicola Rose, who, I mean, the things that she has done for the short track community is incredible. I mean, the $10,000 sponsor raffle is insane. And the fact that a late model driver in Waterford was able to win that is awesome. I mean, it's a team effort. I wouldn't be able to do what I do without those guys. And we just feed off of each other. We work so well together. And so as much as I get the spotlight, or I feel like I get most of the spotlight compared to the rest of the crew, those guys deserve just as much the spotlight as I do. And I'll stand by that.
I like that.
yeah. It's almost too fitting of a way to.
Very humble humble person. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess, is there anything else that you want to either touch on, or something that you want to, any projects that are in the works that we should know about for you?
I'm taking a break from documentaries. I can tell you that much, because that was a lot of work. you were talking about shop tours before we were recording this. I mean, we at this moment, a couple hours ago, we just posted a shop tour of Alex Pearl's place in Colchester. That type of stuff is cool. Seeing the different race shops that there are, it could be a huge garage, 30 by 60. It could be a 2-bay house garage, but they all work for each person, for each race team, stuff like that. One of the biggest things I want to try and do is I want to put a face to a name and have people get to know the drivers, because the racing is important, but the drivers mean just as much, arguably, if not more. The personalities matter. You got to have the personality. You got to have the storylines. You got to have the racing. So we're trying different things. We're working on some profile type things with different drivers, trying to get people to know them. The shop tours are a good way to have people kind of go behind the scenes of what goes on with these race teams and such. So we're trying different things. Race season's coming up quick. We're only 3 months away at this point. We're going to start this thing called Sizzler Shorts. It's like short 2-minute highlights of every spring Sizzler from the 49th annual running in 2021 to the inaugural race in 1972, leading up to the 50th Sizzler. And I am hyped about the 50th Sizzler. I am so excited. There was that part where the whole schedule conflict with NASCAR happened, which was a shit show, but that's not a thing anymore. And the 50th Sizzler, I'm so stoked for. I can't wait to see how many people come. I mean, $15,000 to win. Like, you want to talk about a big event? That's a big event, especially on the local level. There's SRX on the national level. On the local level, this is huge. So that day can't come soon enough, but at the same time, it can wait because we still have some more preparation to do. Otherwise, just keep doing what we're doing, keep working on videos, and as Ben Dodge would say, work our magic.
Well, man, I think that this has been a true pleasure. I think that you provide a good insight into the back end of racetrack workings and how the things that we all enjoy and love are made. For that, I think that we're all grateful. I think that we're all very impressed, and I think that you just need to keep doing what you're doing. You're only a couple of years into it, but you've made a pretty big mark already. So I think on behalf of us, just thank you, man. Appreciate it.
I do want to say thank you guys. Your podcast, I mean, it's hard to get a podcast in this almost like niche type of group to do well. You guys are doing pretty damn well. I don't watch podcasts. I've said that before. And I started hearing about BFP. I'm like, okay, a lot of people are talking about this. I guess I'll take a look. I mean, you guys are so laid back. You're young, you guys are young. So you got the younger demographic, which I think is huge. Everyone enjoys listening to you. You guys are real. You're authentic. I mean, it's so good. Some episodes are super serious. Some are super comical. And some you are out of your damn minds. That's what makes it fun.
Yeah.
So I give you guys a lot of credit. I commend you guys a ton because there's not really any other New England podcast in racing like you guys. And you guys have done a fantastic job. I mean it. I appreciate being on this podcast. It's an honor to be on this podcast. And I hope I didn't ramble too much during this time. But keep up the good work. Keep doing what you're doing. I know your service is appreciated and a lot of people enjoy what you do.
That means quite a lot, man. We appreciate that. There's a lot that goes into it. Everything takes a village. So you're part of that village, and we appreciate you very much.
And you can come back.
Get you to Star Speedway, Bonza. We got to get you up to Star Speedway. That place is my home. It's my track.
I want to go, man. I gotta deal with my car lease first.
No, adult shit. We get that.
Yeah.
One of these days we'll come and we'll pick you up. It's almost on the way if you do it right. But
no.
It'll be quite a car ride, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, it'd be a lot of fun, and you're welcome back on this podcast anytime because it was actually this was good. This is good. I like listening to your story, and now we know each other a lot better. So I'm sure that we'll have more stories from here on out. So.
Well, I can't wait to see you guys at the track soon.
Yeah, it's coming right up. We'll see you soon, man. Appreciate you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Race car. Here we go, race car.